Got an exciting show for you. Can't wait to dive into the content. We're going to be talking about innovation and how technology can help you innovate your business. And we're going to be sharing with you some things you can use to help take your business to the next level. I'm excited. If you are joining us live, let us know that you are and where you're tuning in from. Hit us up in the comments at hashtag live in your city. And if you're catching us on the replay, do the same thing, hashtag replay, and let us know where you're tuning in from. With that, we are about to dive into today's content right now.
Welcome back, folks. It's Technology Tuesday. That's right. We are here every single week, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, bringing you practical knowledge, practical applications. You got practical solutions for your business. And this particular week, I asked Greg if we could give some commentary on some things that have been on my mind, things I've been thinking about, some ideas I've had, because it's very interesting how uh, things, if you're open to it, you're looking around, you can get ideas, innovation, inspiration, influence from things that you do every single day. It doesn't have to be like you're sitting reading a book all the time. You could just see something and be like, oh, that sparks an idea or remind you of something that you have gotten away from. Has that ever
Yes.
happened to you, Greg?
Yeah, man. Several times on this show, I've talked about TV shows and how I found some influence or inspiration or ideas or reminders of things that are in business. Everything from repurposing content, just to a whole lot of things. So, yeah, I use the environment around me because I am open. So, yes, definitely has happened to me many of times.
And this idea, this inspiration, this reminder, this refresher came from I recently saw the Michael movie. So I'll say, for those who haven't seen it, spoiler alert, but there really shouldn't be any spoilers because it's not like Michael Jackson's life is new. Some of us watched it in like real time. So I know Greg and I, that it was like in our lifetime, we saw it. Like we were there
Yes.
at the different points. Um, but Greg, this ties back to how we met, right? For those who don't know, Greg and I, wow, was it 2026 now? So, whoo, 16 years,
Yes,
16 years,
sir.
right?
Yeah,
About
yeah,
16 years, something like that.
yep.
So Greg and I met through a mastermind. So I'm not sure if anyone understands or knows the concept of masterminding. This came out of a book that was written over 100 years ago, a book by Napoleon Hill called Think and Grow
Grow
Rich.
rich.
So if you don't know
Yes.
about that book, definitely go check it out. Think and Grow Rich. And then there's also one by Dennis Kimbro called Think and Grow Rich, a Black Choice, but that's a derivative. Think and Grow Rich talked about this idea of masterminding, that putting yourself in a position where you are surrounded, you are being connected to people that are like-minded, successful, and can help you get to the next level. So Greg and I, excuse me, sorry about that. Greg and I actually met through a mastermind. And like I'm not sure how Greg felt, but when Greg was already in the mastermind, I had joined it, and when I walked in, I was like, well, I gotta find out who this guy Greg is because he was the only other brother in the room. So I was like, I definitely gotta know this man because a lot of times when we would go to these events, right, Greg, it'd be like not that many of us that
Yep.
had
Yep.
melanin in the room. So the reason why I bring this up is because sometimes when people think of the concept of masterminding and they look at it and it says be around like-minded people, they take that and they apply it to like-minded businesses,
Mm.
like-minded industries, like-minded, so they mastermind with people who are kind of doing the exact same thing that they're doing. And for those of us who have experience being in a mastermind with people who are in a diverse amount of industries, different professions. There's a different element to it. And I saw this in the Michael movie because when you are with people who are kind of doing the same thing you're doing, there is a cap. John Maxwell called it the law of the lid. Like the group or the team can only go as high as the leader. Like the leader puts a cap on it. So when you're all doing the same thing, you're in the same industry, then there's a certain way that you all think because you're doing the same things. And when you get around people who don't do what you do, you can cross apply ideas. So this was a reminder for me because of the Michael movie. I was watching it, and as I was watching it, and you're seeing these things that are from a historical context, it reminds you of how much what we now take for granted wasn't always there.
Mm.
Right? There was a
Hey, what's
time
up, everybody?
when
This is
music videos didn't exist. And the reason why this came to my attention is because in the movie, he said, I want to create, I don't want to, he didn't say I want to create music videos. He said, I want to create mini movies to promote my music. So I was thinking, I heard that and I was like, wow, like, yeah, like no one was doing, it wasn't like music videos weren't a thing. It wasn't like this was a thing. Like now, for those of us who grew up post the MTV era,
MTV, yeah.
like it was like everybody had a music video. But at one point, right, you go back to like Elvis, the Beach Boys, Chuck Berry, Little Richard. It wasn't like they were making videos for a music channel because that concept didn't exist.
Right.
And when he had this idea to make these videos, a lot of what he did in terms of his creativity, his innovation, came from his exposure to stuff outside the music industry.
Okay.
He was like watching a lot of horror movies. That's what inspired Thriller, right? He would
Okay.
watch a lot of musicals and dance movies. That's that inspired the cinematography in terms of the camera angles. Like he was doing the video and he was telling the director, you got to capture the feet. You got to capture because they were like, let's zoom in on you. Let's zoom in. But it's like people got to see how the body is moving. He got that from Fred Astaire movies. Like he was like Fred Astaire always says you got to go out from an angle because people got to see the feet because seeing the feet, like if you just see the top, if the person's dancing and you don't see their feet moving, you can't appreciate the total skill involved in the dancing, right?
Nice.
And that's just one thing. So I'll pause right there, Greg, and like look at that innovation maneuver, the idea of using a mini movie to promote the music, and no one had been doing that before. But the way to, when videos first created, like the first Michael's idea for a music video was different than what they were actually putting. Like a lot of the early videos, if anyone goes back and watches them, they're just playing music on camera. They weren't like telling a story.
Yeah, yeah. I can definitely remember the time when I used to watch the music videos after school, and yeah, there would be some creativity, but nothing like the that video that when Thriller came out, and Billie Jean was a different type of one as well. I When you said about being around like-minded people in the mastermind, I started wondering, like, was you referencing him being around like his brothers and then just doing, the regular music, but as you expanded on it, you were more talking about when he was actually already in his solo career. He was by himself, and so he's trying to get ideas from uh, other places outside of the music industry because the videos weren't that movie telling type of videos back then. And I think back to a book that I read by Jay Abrahams, um, and he was saying how, yes, when you get outside of people in your own industry and you study what they're doing and you're hearing from them, and you can usually do this inside of a mastermind group where you're sharing these ideas, you can usually hear and find things that is working well in other industries that you can bring to your own. And the internet has kind of sped this up a little bit, but there still are things that you can learn from other industries and use those ideas in your own, which separates you from everybody else who is just studying the same things within the industry. So if you think like, you know, a YouTube influencer, they're typically just studying other YouTube influencers. They're typically not studying anything typically outside of influencer information to get new ideas, to help them be different in their practice in their business.
Yeah, now, Greg, what I'll add to what you said is this started before he went solo.
Okay.
Part of the genius is that he saved some of his best stuff for himself. That's part of, like, so, like, it's about being strategic or being genius.
Mm-hmm.
Is like he held back on things that he knew until it was his time to be on his own platform. So, for example, we people, for those who don't know, Michael Jackson and the Jackson family grew up in Indiana, Gary, Indiana. But then eventually, when they started to get popular, right? Started making money. Got the record deal, right? They got the record deal with Motown. Motown was in Detroit, so Michigan, Indiana, it's all in the same area of the country,
Mm-hmm.
right? But eventually they moved out to California because Motown went out west, right? And the Jacksons went out west. Um, so there was this song that the Jackson Five did called "Dancing Machine," right? And Michael Jackson was what we would call, well, break dancing hadn't really started yet, but people were doing like popping and locking, right? So depending on what side of the country you're on, like New York versus California, right? Like, so, like thinking, I don't, I'm not, I don't have the expertise on top of my head, but I know like one side was like, had a different style. Like New York had a style, and California had a style in terms of like how the body movement. So like popping and locking. So Michael actually was studying street performers. He was studying and he was learning from the people who were dancing on the street. Like, and the reason why it became like popular, right, is now people are seeing what the kids on the street are doing on TV because they're like on, Ed Sullivan or wherever. So it's like they're bringing it to the masses, right? So, like even from the TV show What's Happening, right? Rerun was
Mm-hmm.
in one of those groups, the Pop and Locking. So like Michael was taking this stuff, getting influence from cats on, what I mean? Like you used to, like, Greg, you grew up in New York, right? People be on like this dance, and he was like, oh, and so I'll give you an example. Motown 25, right, is where the world got introduced to a very special move. Do you know what dance move the world got introduced to on Motown 25, Greg?
I do not.
So this is when Billie Jean was out, right? So it was the 25th anniversary of Motown. This is in the 80s. And the Jacksons came out and performed. And then the brothers left the stage, and Michael was up there by himself. And he started dancing to Billie Jean. He was singing Billie Jean. And then there was like a dance break, and all of a sudden he starts sliding across the floor backwards.
I was going to guess it, but I didn't want to be wrong. Oh man.
So the world got introduced to what they called the moonwalk. But the moonwalk really isn't the moonwalk. The moonwalk was called the backslide, which he had learned from these dancers, these,
Street performance. Okay.
the kids on the street, the people who were performing um in the popping and locking groups. He had learned that move. Now he learned the move when he was still part of the Jackson Five, but he had never displayed it until that TV special, right? That special in front of this big auditorium of people. He had it in his pocket the whole entire time. He could have done that with the brothers, but he held on to it until it was just him, and then that became his signature move. Now, this is also a point of going back to the whole masterminding. Like, here you have a person who was already recognized as one of the top dancers in the world, right? And now, what is he doing? He's going to improve his style, his steps, by learning from people who aren't as famous as him, who aren't as successful as him, who aren't as wealthy, rich, whatever you want to call it. Like, he's going out to the people who are on the cutting edge and seeing what they're doing to help improve what he can do. And because when he does it, it magnifies it and expands it on a whole nother level. So a lot of times people are always looking up for inspiration, and here he is, he's looking down or sideline for inspiration, but in a place that most people would overlook. A lot of people weren't putting respect on what these young people were doing on the street because they labeled them as, you know, uh, problematic, because they're like, oh, they don't see them as credible, as the stuff that they're respectable, right? Like the respectability issue of it. So here he is like, nah, I see something here. I need to study from these folks. I need to humble myself and put my stuff at their tutelage to learn from what they're doing. So the question I have for those who are listening is like, how often are you stepping out of your comfort zone in terms of where you're looking for ideas or inspiration, where you're looking for the next thing, the next cutting edge? Like where are you finding these things? Because we get so locked into these silos of being. Because sometimes, Greg, we're going to events, right, conferences where it's only people who do what we do. So the idea of stepping out, um, we could tie it into your sport, right? Football. I grew up in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania has two football teams, the Eagles and the Steelers. Well, Lynn Swan was a wide receiver back in the 70s.
70s.
He studied ballet to make himself a better wide receiver. So he was learning these movements to allow him to be more agile on the football field. So a completely different art form, completely different sport, completely different athletic thing. There's like, well, I can see the crossover between this and like his acrobatic, his leaping, right? Because ballet dancers had to like, do that little whatever they do thing. Sydney probably knows better than I do, right, Greg?
Yes,
And
yes.
they had to do that type of stuff. So it helped him make these catches that the average receiver wasn't making, which made him a much better player, made him into a Hall of Famer. So when I looked at this movie, it reminded me of this idea that I heard so many, many years ago about stepping out of your industry and seeing how you can replicate what other people are doing in different industries to maximize yours. And personally, I've applied this to my own life, my own business. Even what you're seeing today on camera came from stepping out of my industry. Like when 2020 hit and everybody was going virtual. Now, first of all, the idea of using Zoom or webinars existed long before 2020. 2020 is when it really hit critical mass because everybody was forced to do these virtual meetings. But I started to notice that there was like a pattern. People were using these like virtual backgrounds where they were having themselves on the beach or in outer space, right? Or people were putting like, a bookshelf behind them. It was like there was like a standard look. And I was like, I needed to be different. So I didn't study other speakers. I didn't study other presenters. I didn't study other coaches. I didn't study the people in my industry to see how to set up the camera stuff. I went to look at what the streamers were doing, the people who were playing video games on the internet, and like what equipment are they using? What type of lights do they have? And then I broke all that down, item for item, technology for technology, and that's how I created my setup with the stuff you see here. And now people be like, "Oh man, I've never seen anything like this before." Like, "Where? How'd you do that?" Or people have been asking me for years, "How did I create the setup?" Or, you know, is that a real background, or is that fake? Like, no, it's real. This is a room. I turned the room and upgraded it or whatever you want to do because I learned about how to do lighting, what type of sound you should have, angles, all that type of stuff came from people who did a totally different thing than the thing that I was doing. And I looked to see how can I apply it into the way that I wanted to show up for the industry that I'm in.
Yeah, I did the same thing. I studied people who were streaming to get a in the early part of it, get an understanding of how to stream the show. And obviously it changed over the years, but yeah, I 100% agree. Sometimes you have to look outside of your industry to get innovation and ideas. And it's interesting how you related that, and thought about that during your reflection of the Michael movie. And even though I haven't seen it yet, I will be seeing it soon. um, Many a times I have got inspiration from outside of, the industry that I'm in. I have gotten many times inspiration from church. A lot of times the pastor's lesson would be like, that's a good marketing lesson right there. A lot of times his sermons are a straight up marketing lesson. But I think that is because I'm just open. And I think you mentioned it early on in the show where you talk about if you're open. And I think a lot of times when you are open, you'll start to see way more. And it just comes down to like some of the questions you ask yourself, like, what can I learn from this? Is there anything that I can get from this that can help me with my business, no matter where you're at, what you're doing? Um, Recently, I was listening to an audiobook, and it wasn't the whole book. It was just like, how sometimes on Audible you can hear a preview. So it was like the first 3 minutes or whatever. And just from the first 3 minutes, it was like, oh, I can see how I can use part of what they said in a presentation. And a lot of times it's just being open. And the whole mastermind concept is when you get to share your ideas with others from your perspective, but you get to see and hear from others how they handle problems or the problems that they have and get a different perspective. And a lot of times that different perspective can give you an advantage in your industry when you're looking for ways to compete, right? And to be more not only productive, but a better um, marketer or do better in your business with others. And many times it's just about being able to be open and to be um, willing to try new things, new angles, and that perspective is key when it comes to finding an advantage. And my thing has always been, how can I find an advantage? And especially more than ever now that you're here with AI, like AI is here, and a lot of times, the questions you have or can be easily answered by AI. And the thing is, it's not that, oh, great, I can use it. It's like, okay, the perspective I have is everyone can use it. So how can I have an advantage if everyone has this same tool, if everyone has this same access? How can I have an advantage? And so that's the things that I be thinking about when it comes to my business. And by talking with others in other industries, is you'll hear some things that the people who are stuck in their own industry will not hear. So Jerry, I want to thank you for sharing that, man. I appreciate you bringing forth that perspective.
Yeah, man. And just so we're clear to folks, we're not advocating the idea of eliminating your connection to people in your industry. So it's still cool to mastermind, link up, connect with people in the industry. That's where you get your quote unquote best practices, right? What we call best practices. But the the idea, the innovation, the inspiration, the things that can change the way the industry operates, that can, as Greg mentioned, give you an advantage, give you a different perspective, a uh, a unique position, right? That a lot of that can be derived from stepping out of your industry and seeing what you can take from other things to apply to yours. And um, we see it. It's there's this quote I heard one time. It's called "hidden in plain sight." This is happening all around us. A lot of times we're just not always paying attention to when people are taking something from another industry and then applying it to a new industry. They're taking one concept, switching it up, putting it over here. So yeah, man, like Greg, we were talking about the gym, right? The this new thing that I learned at the gym, the e-gym, right? So it's like they took the technology of the AI and automation and like put it into having a wristband and the machines customize itself to you. So there's this idea of staying within my group to learn the best ways for my group, right? Which is great. But then there's this other idea of step outside of your group to look at what others are doing to see what you can bring back to your group.
Nice, nice. Man, you kind of inspired me, and I'll share some things with you later. But yeah, the mastermind concept is a really good one. If you haven't experienced, you should look for. There's masterminds everywhere where you go. If you're open to looking, you if you knock, it shall be opened, right? So yeah, find a mastermind
Or
group
we
and,
could
and
take
be
it a
part of
step
it.
further. For those who are watching the show that follow us, um, if you want Greg and I to create a mastermind for our followers between the people who follow our show, because we're all not in the same industries. We're using technology, but we use it for different reasons. Make sure you technologytuesday.com, be a part of that seven-figure path. Just let us know. Put in the comments in the group, reach out to us, send us a message on socials or wherever you can find Greg and I, or it comes up at the end of the show, at Greg Russell, excuse me, at Ask Greg Russell or at Jerry Poe. You can find us on the socials. Let us know if you're like, hey guys, I'm having trouble finding a mastermind. Can you start one? Can we be a part of mastermind with you? Like, yeah, if that's something that you believe would serve you, would serve your future ventures, would serve your business where you are in the industry, please let us know.
Yes, that's awesome. With that, man, I want to thank you for being here with me again. Another exciting week. And yes, reach out to us. Join us at technologytuesday.com. Make sure you tune in every Tuesday, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Right? Have a great week, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Take care.